My name's John, and this is Simon. We've worked as content creators for some time and wanted to share delicious knowledge from the cookie jar. So if you got some time, you're welcome to the NavBar. Hello! Welcome to another stream day. This is my second time streaming today, and I think my my fifth time streaming in the last 4 days. So yeah, if I just randomly fall asleep during this, just send a couple of comments, loud caps, all caps comments, and hopefully I will wake up. So today is the third and final stream of this 3-part series. I might look at doing some other cool stuff next week, but for now I just want to get something kind of deployed and working. But yeah, we're definitely not finishing this today. There's so much to go through. But today we're going to focus all on GraphQL and see how far we get. So hopefully you are either interested in GraphQL or just have no idea about GraphQL and want to learn, because yeah, there's lots and lots to go through in this episode. If you are joining me live, let me know in the comments if this is your first stream, whether you've joined me for the other 2 streams or whether you have watched those videos yet. And also, like, where's your level at with GraphQL? And I'll try and kind of tailor my explanation as I go, based on everyone's familiarity. But if you haven't checked out the first 2 parts, I will go through a quick recap. But if you want to go a bit deeper, I recommend you go and check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/c/John Myers. And you can go and see just the videos or whatever is live. But I've also put together this nice little playlist here, which I will be updating each day with our adventure as we go. So sorry, this is playing through headphones over there. Yeah, so we've got 2 episodes there so far. I'll add this episode to it, and then any other episodes that I end up doing next week, or the week after, or the week after that. This might just be a project that I end up building forever. So I will keep updating this playlist as I go. So what are we actually building? We are building a super over-engineered app for the new NavBar website. So if you don't know yet, the NavBar is a weekly podcast by Simon Vrashliotis and myself, where we help you navigate the web and raise the bar for your content creation. So if I just go to anchor.fm/navbar, this is our podcast, and you can listen to it on any of the platforms. So I recommend you go and give that a subscribe or follow or like, or I don't know what all the terms are, but go and click the buttons that change the data in the database to say that we're good, not bad. And then more people will think we're good and maybe give it a go. So to actually plan all of the content for this podcast, we use Notion. And I forgot to pull up an example of our episodes. Let me pull that across here. Oop. All right, there we go. So this is our NavBar Notion. And so this is where anytime we have a new idea for an episode, we drop it in here, and then it goes through planning and ready to record, recorded, ready to release, and then released. So by the time it gets to released, it usually has quite extensive show notes, and usually quite like SEO rich show notes, because it's like a whole bunch of dot points as to what we're going to talk about. Yeah, we just wanted to build a website to actually host all of this so that people can go to our website to listen to episodes if they would like, or pitch us an episode they would like us to cover, or a topic they would like us to cover, and also to give Google all that delicious SEO juice to say these are the things that they're talking about on this podcast. Hello from France. Hi, welcome to this live stream. What time is it over in France at the moment? Let me just pull this back up. There is no way we're getting through all of this. No way. But we'll give it a go. We'll do our best. So for the first couple of streams, we built out our remix application, which looks something like this at the moment. And so this is the state of the application. We have all of these different episodes, and if we click into one of them, we get a unable to connect error because I'm not actually running this code base. So over here, if I say npm run dev, we can refresh. And this is going to take a really long time to load because this is the exact thing that we were trying to solve with this series. I am not showing my screen. Thank you so much. This is not the first time I have had severe tech issues, and it's taken a really long time to work it out. So this time only 6 minutes. That's good. In that case, I'll rewind a little bit and say that this is the YouTube channel where you can go and get this playlist that I will update each day. And this is the NavBar podcast with all of the different places that you can listen to it. The way that we keep a track of all of our episodes is we have this Notion document or this Notion database. And when we have a new idea, we dump it in here and it slowly works its way across until it's released. And so this is what a released episode looks like. And then we have a whole bunch of stuff, which would be good to make available to people if they would like to dig deeper or make available to Google bots and Google juicy things. So in the first couple of streams, we started building this remix application. And so we have a list of all of our episodes on the left. And so that's been pulled in by from the Notion API. We pull in this data. And then if we click on one of these episodes, it takes a really long time to load. And eventually we will see that the content is swapped out on the page, maybe. I wonder if I actually clicked. Maybe I didn't click. No, I did click. Okay. That's just how long it takes. And so that's the exact problem that we're trying to solve here, that it is very not super performant. And it's not just the way that the Notion API works. We're doing some like not performance stuff to turn all of the Notion blocks into Markdown and then into HTML. And we're doing that live on each request. So every time we click one, we're going and fetching all this data from the Notion API. We're then making more requests to the Notion API. And then, it's quite a slow process. But the thing that is perfect about this is that it really like represents a real world problem where you might need to use a service that just happens to be slow. There's not really anything you can do to speed up the source of that problem because you don't own the code base. And so you kind of need to get a little bit more creative with how you're going to improve the performance, probably with caching. So we talked a little bit over the last couple of streams that you could use cache control headers. There's lots of solutions to this problem. But what we did is build a caching layer that sits in between the Remix application and the Notion API. So the Remix application makes a request to a Cloudflare Worker, which is what we are using in the middle. And that's using KV storage to cache the results from the Notion API. So if the Remix app requests data and we have a cached copy of it, we can just send it back straight away. Otherwise, we need to go and get that data fresh from Notion, and then we cache the result. So the next person gets a nice, fast cached result instead of needing to wait as long as we need to wait over here. So I can click one of these, gives me a good opportunity to have a nice big sip of water. And now it's swapped over. Okay, cool. So today, we're going to step up the complexity yet again, and we're going to make this Cloudflare Worker a fully fledged GraphQL server. So why are we actually doing that? Because that seems unnecessary. and it's somewhat unnecessary, but it solves a couple of problems for us. So we're currently getting all of our episodes from this Cloudflare worker. So this Cloudflare worker goes and checks whether we have cached episodes. So it tries to pull it out of our NavBar KV store. And then if we have cached episodes, then we're going to return them straight away. Otherwise, we're going to go off to Notion. We're going to get all of the bits and pieces. We're going to then write them back to the KV store. So the next person gets to benefit from all that work that we've done. And then we send a response. But this gives us a list of all of the episodes, but we probably also want to get individual episodes. And so if we're looking at this page, like if we go back to just /episodes, this part of the route is grabbing all of the episodes from that Cloudflare worker. But then when we click one of these, we haven't implemented a Cloudflare worker or KV storage for this ridiculous amount of work that needs to happen to display the HTML. So we would need to either create another route to be able to handle that, and it would probably need to be like a dynamic route or a collection of routes. And then we would need to be able to fetch a list of all of our episodes and then the dynamic route for fetching the data for a specific episode. And so in my brand new, entirely free Egghead course, where we cache Supabase data at the edge with Cloudflare workers and KV storage, we use something called itty router, which I think is probably one of the earlier lessons. So yes, we use itty router to basically do exactly this. So we have multiple routes. We have a route for just like if this was our NavBar example, then we would have /episodes, and that would give us all of our like the big list of episodes. And then we would have like /episodes /slug, and then that slug part is a dynamic part of the route. And so then we can pass in whichever episode we actually want to get the data for. So I recommend if you enjoy the content or enjoy the this kind of solution to the problem of using Cloudflare workers and KV storage to cache data, then I highly recommend that you go and check out this course. It's only 28 minutes long or 14 minutes at 2x speed, and it's entirely free. And in it, we also use this magical little piece here, Supabase, which is where I work. If you didn't know this before, I'm a developer advocate at Supabase. And Supabase gives us this magical piece called database webhooks, where we can actually listen to changes in the database, and then we can automatically go and update our KV stores. So in this example that we're stepping through with the Notion API, there's no way to subscribe to changes in our Notion database. So we need to eventually build a scheduled task that can go and check whether something's changed or whether something's changed. But for today, we'll definitely just be doing it manually. But yes, we should get into actually building it because we're already like 15 minutes in. So that solves like part of the problem. Using GraphQL means that if you're familiar with GraphQL, you get like one single endpoint. So like if this was our GraphQL server, it might be just /GraphQL. And then this, if you navigate to it in a browser, you will get a graphical playground where you get to kind of you can inspect what is available and build up your queries, which we will look at very soon. And then when you've got a query that you actually want to put in your application, then you would send a post request to this same endpoint, and it would handle multiple different types of queries. So it solves our problem of needing a router, because each of those queries or each of those separate routes just becomes its own query. But the other benefit that we get is that we can actually like filter down the shape of the response. So if we only care about an ID and a title, then we can just fetch the ID and the title and not get back like slug and release date and audio URL. So yeah, there's not really a way to do that if we just have a Cloudflare worker that's returning us our cached results, it's kind of just going to give us back everything as a big JSON response. So using something like GraphQL allows us to, like, from the client, declare what we would actually like to get back. But yes, enough talking. Let's jump into it and actually start setting this up. So the first thing we're going to set up is GraphQL, and we are going to use GraphQL Yoga for this, because it is a fully featured GraphQL server with a focus on easy setup, performance, and great developer experience. And so, yes, it has very little config, and it works perfectly in Cloudflare Workers. In fact, I think if we go integrations, Cloudflare Workers, there is this awesome video here that we can go through, or that you can go into more depth. And I think there's also, there's a really awesome guide written by this person. I don't know who this person is. But yes, basically they've put a whole lot of work into building integrations and breaking down the barriers of using this in different places. So it's super simple to use. So let's use the super simple thing. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to quit our remix server. We probably won't be playing with the remix side for a little bit. At the end of this video, we'll wire it all up to work, hopefully, if we get there. But for now, we want to install at GraphQL Yoga /common. These are the parts of this library that are common across all of the different platforms or environments. And then we also want to install GraphQL. Now we're going to need to do quite a lot of changing this. We're basically going to need to scrap all of this, but this is a really good example of how we would fetch this data if we weren't using GraphQL. So I might just rename this one to index-original, and then just make a new copy, which can be our new version. Because the very first thing that we're going to do in our new version is get rid of all of this. And we're also going to, sorry, I was meant to leave the fetch bit there, wasn't I? We'll have our fetch. That will stay the same, but the rest of this will go. Cool. So that's looking nice and clean. We also don't need our Notion client here at the moment, but we'll bring that in when we need it. So quick explanation as to how a GraphQL server works, or how you configure a GraphQL server. So the first thing we're going to do is bring in create server from at GraphQL Yoga /common. And then we are going to call that create server function and pass it in a configuration object that has our type defs. So these are all of the types that we're declaring for our GraphQL server, and then resolvers. And so these are basically the functions that we want to run to go and fetch that data. So we can declare above here what our type defs are. I don't like this indentation. Oh, no, there we go. Cool. It's totally up to me. So we're creating this type defs string, which is just basically a collection of types. So if you're used to something like TypeScript or any other strongly typed language, this should look very familiar. But here we're just declaring one query type of hello. So this is a query that we can send to our GraphQL server, and we're declaring that this must return a string. So we will definitely respond with a string if anybody sends a request to here. So then if we want to declare some resolvers, so the functions that are actually going to serve this query, we can create an object of resolvers with the key query. So this matches our type query. And then in here, we've said that we're declaring a query type of hello. And so this is our resolver for hello. This is how we're going to fetch that data. And this is the shape of what a resolver function looks like. So it always has a parent, which we won't go through in this in today's stream, but I might go through it in a future stream, depending on how complex we want to get with our GraphQL server. We also get a collection of arguments, and then we get our environment. So the way that we actually use this server down here is we return server server.handle request, and then we pass it in our request, which is what we got from our fetch function here. So the request that gets passed in here, we want that full request because it's rich with all kinds of juicy information. So we pass in that request, and then we also want to pass in like all of these bits that we get as part of our environment. So this is where Cloudflare injects in anything that we're going to need. So our environment variables, it injects in our our KV stores. So here, database ID and Notion API secret are two environment variables, and then NavBar is our KV store. And so I'm just going to, rather than destructuring this in the function declaration, I'm just going to rename this whole object that we get as env. So this is just stuff for our environment. And then we also pass that along to handle request. So server.handle request, and we're passing it our full request and our environment. And that should be all we need to do, I think. So then, yeah, we have a collection of our types, we have a collection of our resolvers, and then our hello function, when we actually run this resolver function, which is when we send a query to it, this is what we're executing. So in here, we're just returning a string hello from resolver. So if we save this, and then we run at our server by saying npm run, not that, by saying wrangler dev, we're now running at port 8787. So we can come across to the browser and we can go to localhost 8787. And then, as I said before, if you send a GET request to this, which is what the browser does by default, then we get this GraphQL playground. So this is a place where we can work out what's actually available in this GraphQL server. So we have auto-generated documentation for each thing. So we have a query. This doesn't look like it's loading in my hello query. Uh-oh, something's already gone wrong. Let's have a look. We have type defs. We have resolvers, query, hello. I've done something wrong. Okay. This might be a very, very slow episode if we can't even get past this part. We have type defs, which is a string. We have resolvers, and then we're passing in type defs. And all right, let's try rerunning wrangler dev just to see if it gives us any errors, which it doesn't. And if we just get rid of all of this, maybe do a hard refresh. Do we get anything? Still getting greetings. Okay. Something is horribly wrong. Let's have a look actually at that guide and see whether it should be this simple. So we've npm installed these two. We've brought in create server, but the way that we do it is without handle request. So here we're calling create server. Intriguing. Well, let's see what happens if I actually send this greetings one. So this is not reading in what we have in here. So what has happened? I might just delete this index original just in case there's anything weird going on. I don't think that would be it. But what has happened? Type query, hello, returning a string, resolvers, all good, rerun our server. and head over here, refresh. And then if we send that again, that's what we're getting back. Okay, so it hasn't read in. So to explain, this basically means that this is not working because it's not specifying our type defs or our resolvers. It is stuck on the default ones um, that come with Cloudflare. Sorry, that come with GraphQL Yoga. So let's just do a quick look at another code base where I've done similar to this. And let's see what mistake I have made. Because this shouldn't be a problem at this point. The only other thing I can think is doing something like this and then pulling that out like that from there. See if that makes a difference. And no, that's still doing exactly the same thing. Very, very strange. Well, maybe we will just move on to this version of our index.js. And so all this is doing is it's doing exactly the same thing with the server. So it's creating a server with our type defs and our resolvers. And then it's just returning the handle request, passing in the request and the env. The only thing is I have declared some slightly more complex types. So we have if we start from the query, we have the query type, which has episodes and a single episode on it. So essentially we can call send an episodes query and get back an array of episodes, or we can send a query for just a singular episode, giving it the string that we care about, and then we just get back one episode. And we've declared the type for episode here, so that has an ID, a string, a title, a release date, and an audio URL. Our resolvers are also just slightly more complex in that they have a resolver for each of those. So we have an episodes one and an episode one. We have parent, args, and then our environment. And then here we have parent. We're destructuring slug, which is our argument that we're passing into here. And then we have our environment again. So what we need to do is get all of our episodes or get a single episode. So let's see if I just return null and return null, does this work? Let's see. What kind of query do we have available? Greetings. Okay, everything's broken. What has happened? We've installed GraphQL Yoga. We've installed GraphQL. That's all fine. We are calling create server and passing it our type defs and our other thing. All right. So we've done this part. We have created a server. And then this is what I'm doing here. So I'm creating, is that all it is? Maybe. Okay. I'm going to say const schema is equal to an object. And then in that object, I'm going to have type defs, and I'm going to have resolvers. So I'm going to move these into here, and then rather than having semicolons here, we want commas. Rather than having equals, we want colons. And then save. And then we have this schema object, which has type defs and it has resolvers. And so then here, we're just going to pass it our schema. So this is just this big object. And let's see if this makes a difference. I think it will. So if we get rid of greetings, no, still broken. All right. So now we have a schema, which is an object. We have type defs, which is set to a string. We have resolvers, which is an object with a query and a bunch of stuff on it. And then we're passing it through just like that. Which is exactly how I was doing it just before. Nah, I've worked it out. I blew it. It's that one. It gets past a schema. I should use TypeScript for these kinds of things. That would definitely help me. If I open this up, yes, schema is what I need to pass through. And then schema can be set to an object that has both type definitions and our resolvers. Okay, so now this will actually definitely work. Yeah, there we go. We have a list of our episodes and we can get each of their IDs, and we're not getting anything back because we just get null, because that's what I'm explicitly returning from here. So if we wanted to quickly show what I was going to say before, if we had hello that was going to return a string, then we would just need to create a resolver for that. So we would have hello, which can return hello world directly. And now if we refresh this page, if we press Control Space here, we see a list of all of our different resolvers that we can call. And so we can call hello, and that's just going to give us hello world. Yeah, GraphQL, you just match a type for your query with a resolver that you want to, like a function that you want to run to get that value or resolve that value. So let's build up our episodes resolver so that we can go and get all of our episodes from Notion. So let's go. In the interest of time, I might need to go through this a little bit quickly. But this will be similar to that index file that we just deleted before. And so rather than returning null, we want to do something like this. So for our episodes, this is just basically what we were going through in yesterday's stream. So this is where we integrated our KV store into the situation. So this is where we had a cache where we could remember those values. So the first thing we do is we go and check, do we have a full list of episodes in our NavBar cache? And then because that's just one big string, we need to pass it out as JSON. So then we have our cached episodes. And then if we actually have cached episodes, so if that is equal to anything, then we want to return those immediately. And so this is how we can send back that cached value straight away. So if we don't have them, then we want to go and make that request to Notion and go and get that data. So we create a new Notion client. We create an array of episodes and this data object. Basically, we are just filtering all of the results in our database via the status property, making sure that it is set to released. We're then sorting it by release date. And then this cursor stuff is just about pagination, which is something that, Notion only gives us, I think, 100 results at a time. And so right now that's not a problem because we don't have 100 episodes, but we're protecting ourselves from the future by just paginating over all of those results to pull out all of our episodes. So then we're iterating over all of those, and we are creating this new array of episodes that is just a collection of objects that has ID, title, slug, release date, audio, URL. And we're pulling those out from the ridiculous structure that Notion gives us back. And then we've got HTML here, and I've just added a to-do to implement this because, yeah, it's a little bit complicated. We might do a whole episode on that one. So at this point, we have a array of episodes, which are the episodes that we went and got from Notion, and we've kind of filtered down the shape of those to be just an ID, title, slug, release date, URL, audio URL, and HTML. And so these match our schema, which has ID, slug, title, release date, audio URL, and HTML. So this episode type is basically what we wanted to create here. So at this point, we have an array of all of our different NavBar episodes. And so then we go and write them to the cache. So at the path /episodes, we want to insert the data of a stringified version of our episodes array. And then we want to just return those episodes to the user. So yeah, basically go and check the cache. If we have a cached version, then just send that immediately and don't do any more work. If we don't have a cached version, then we need to go and get one. So go and get fresh results from Notion. So we go off to Notion, we get that, we do all of this work. And then since we've done that work, we don't want to do it again. So we write it to the cache. And then the next person that comes will go through this same process, but this time there will be a cached version of those episodes. So that will just get sent back immediately. Cool. So that's how we do an array of episodes. So then if we wanted to just get a single episode, this is the part that we didn't get to in the last stream. But again, I have this nice big blob of code, which I can dump in here and then just go through it. So again, we check, is there an episode at /episodes and then / the slug of our episode. So we need some kind of unique key to be able to pull out the right data for the episode that we're looking for. So each one of these episodes that we cache needs to have its own unique path to cache it. So that's going to be /episodes / the slug. And the reason that we're doing that is it follows the same pattern as our URL for the episode. So we're going to /episodes / and then the slug for the episode. So it's really easy for us to map this to our cache, and we just know that basically we're setting it up so that every one of these paths has an associated path in our KV store. And we just have this GraphQL layer in the middle, allowing us to kind of filter the bits that we need. So we check if we have a cached episode. If we do, we send that back straight away. If not, we again create a Notion client. We go off and query the database for any record where the slug matches /episodes / slug. So again, if I come back to our Notion database here, each of our episodes has this formula field, which is generated from the title. So this is /episodes / Simon's origin story. If I was to change this to Simon's origin story about puppies, then this would automatically calculate that as the new slug, Simon's origin story about puppies. So every time we add a character up here, it automatically generates the slug, but that is not what we're going through in this stream. That can be another stream. So this is going to give us back an array of anything that matches that slug. And obviously that slug is, it's not enforced by Notion, but it's a value that we want to be unique because we have to have a unique URL for every single one of our episodes. And so it gives us back an array. So episode results.results is an array of all of the things that match this query. And so here we're just pulling out the first index of that array and calling it raw episode. And then this is what we were going through in the first stream, where we're essentially using this Notion to Markdown package, which is a super awesome, very helpful package that basically, it's just the glue that makes this possible. So shout out to there is a, yeah. uh, Suvicinator. Shout out to Suvicinator or Suvic for building this awesome package. Because yeah, it basically makes this possible where you can just give it any like block from Notion that has a heading, images, quotes, all of these different things that are supported so far, and turn it into a markdown version of that, which is what we're doing here. So we're saying, well, first we're saying page to markdown. So give it an ID for a page, and then it goes and gets all of these blocks, which is Notion's representation of this kind of hierarchical structure of the page, basically like a HTML document. And then we're saying turn that into a markdown string. So take all of those blocks that are Notion specific and turn them into something that's more generic, which is just markdown syntax. And then we can use the marked package, which is a separate package, to pass that markdown. And so at this point, we would have something like Simon's blah, 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 and then like a paragraph, and then like maybe a list of stuff. So this markdown syntax is what we would have um, at this point here. We just have one big string of all of the markdown for that episode. So then we're using marked to take markdown and turn it into HTML. So then we have our HTML elements. So then we're constructing an episode object here. And so we're using some of the data that we got back from Notion when we made this request to Notion. So we're getting the ID, the title, the slug, the release date, and the audio URL. And then we are passing through that HTML that we've generated from marked. And then again, because that's so much work to do, we don't want to do that every single request or every time someone sends a query to our GraphQL server. So we are going and promptly writing that to the KV store, so we never have to do it again. So we're saying navbar.put, and then again we need to give it a unique path, and so we're doing /episodes/ whatever the slug is for our episode, and then we're stringifying the episode as we put it into the KV store, because it only accepts a string key and string data. So we can't just give it a big JSON object. We need to stringify it. Cool. And then we just return that nicely constructed episode from our GraphQL server. So that should handle both of those use cases, where we can now call our episodes query, and then we can just specify what we would like to get back from GraphQL, or we can call our episode query. The slight difference here is that we need to pass through a slug for the thing that we're looking for. So if we have a look up here at our query, episodes, we don't need to pass anything additional. We just say we want all of the episodes, and then we get back an array of episodes. But if we want to get an episode, we need to pass a parameter of a slug, which has to be a string, and then we will get back an episode associated with that slug. So this is still running. Let's say Wrangler dev again, and we'll go back over to our GraphQL Yoga server and get rid of all that. Again, if you press Control Space, you will get a list of all the things that you can do. So here we want to send a query, and then again we can press Control Space to keep kind of using like IntelliSense to work out what we can actually query here and what we need. So this is one of the awesome things. The thing that I think like sells it for me using GraphQL is just this like discoverability. Like you can use this GraphQL playground to kind of like slowly piece together your query, and like it's going to give you really good errors. Like if I said I want like episode and I did too many E's and then went like this, I would get a little red squiggly here. Which, all right, the dark mode isn't very nice, but it says syntax error, expected name found this. So if I was to say like I want the title from the episode, all right, that actually is going to work and just fail. But yeah, if I were to try to get back an episode and then I say that I want just the titles of an episode, it's going to give me an error saying that the field episode argument slug of type string is required but was not provided. So really nice clear error messages to say, oh, right, I'm trying to select an episode, but the argument slug, so that hints that it needs some kind of argument here. And it's telling me that the type is slug. And if I put my cursor here and do control space, it's actually going to autofill slug because that's the only argument that it knows that it's expecting. And if I do colon, then I can put in like John's origin story. Oops. I think is one of our recent episodes. And now if I send this GraphQL query, I get an unexpected error, which is not great. What does unexpected error mean? How about we start with just getting all of our episodes? So we want to query all of our episodes. And again, if I try and send this, it's going to fill it in for me. But basically, we can't query all episodes without a collection of subfields that we're looking for. So this is saying you probably want to look for at least an ID, and I'm going to look for a title as well. We are getting an unexpected error, which is not very helpful when this also doesn't give us an error message. Let's see if I restart this one, Wrangler dev, and then we refresh this one, and then we try to send this again. We are still getting an unexpected error. All right, more things to work out where the problem is. Hack the Coding is joining us from Kenya and saying, hello, John. Hello, Hack the Coding. What time is it over in Kenya? I'm going to guess that it is earlier on Friday than right now. So maybe like, I'm going to say like midday, maybe 11 a.m. Just going to just take a wild guess and go with 11 a.m. All right. So we have an unexpected error on our paths episodes. And it's really not helping us with a more helpful error message. So we have our resolvers for episodes. This gets all this stuff. And I guess we should start just pouring through with our lovely console logs. So let's say console log top. And then let's say like console log cached. And then maybe console log fresh. So we'll see whether we start at the top of our resolver, whether we are sending back this cached response, or whether we're going and fetching fresh data from Notion. So now if I run this and come back to our terminal here, we're seeing top. So it started executing the resolver, which is good. We're expecting to see that. Oh, it's 9:47 in Kenya. I was so close. not that close. Oh yeah, I guess I was only an hour off. That's pretty close. When console do we need to do with string or without? So with console, console.log is like is super powerful for debugging. And the reason that it is super powerful for debugging is that you can give it like basically anything and it can work out how to print it out for you. It's a little bit more limited on like the server side, but if I was to, instead of giving this just a string, if I gave it an object with like name set to John, and then I go and trigger this just to run that piece of code, you'll see that it printed out an object with name John. And so it's really powerful in that it can kind of look into that object or that thing that we're trying to pass to it, and it can try to print it out in as convenient a way as it can. So yeah, so here I was just using the string top just to try to just to make sure that I could see any kind of console log. It didn't really matter what went in it, but just the string top was just the simplest thing to write. But you can pass it like an object. You can pass it an array of objects. It's super flexible, and that's why a lot of people tend to use console log debugging like I'm using right now to work out where something's gone wrong. So we are getting to here, and then we're not serving up the cached episodes because we haven't cached them yet. And then we're getting to fresh. So somewhere down here, something's going wrong. So we're going off to the Notion database, the Notion API to get all of our results. So I would say the next place that we should probably check how things are going is here. And so we could say after Notion, and then maybe we could print out what. So here we would have episodes. So that's what we go and write to the KV store. And so if I say episodes, you'll be able to see what that is equal to. So if I run this again and then come back to our console, I'm only seeing top. So something has failed in the middle here. I'm just going to take a stab and say maybe it's audio URL. This is because I was having some weird problems with something else. No, wasn't that. Okay. Okay, so we are creating a Notion client, and we're doing that with the Notion API secret, which we have here. We're saying the Notion version to be this version, which I went through in a previous episode, but basically the shape of the API has changed a little bit. And yeah, this is the version that is in the shape that we want it to be for this example. So then we go database query, blah, blah, blah. Let's say console.log. So this is after our first page of the what's this saying? A text request. Cloudflare API case review. Intriguing. A request to the Cloudflare API. Blah 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 blah. Failed text. Blah 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 blah. Okay, let's just try quitting our development server and starting again. So saying wrangler dev, and we're running over port 8787. So maybe we'll give this a refresh and then send that request. And what do we get in the console? We only got top. Okay, so we're not even getting to that part. What is happening here? It's been a very interesting episode of very weird bugs, very strange ghosts in the system. And then we don't get to after Notion, so that doesn't work. So let's see what happens here. Send this, come back here, open this. We've still only got top. That doesn't make any sense. So if we put blah above the Notion client stuff. Did I forget to bring in the Notion client? I did. Okay. Woo! That took me way too long to work out. They really should have much better error messages. I'm going to blame them instead of blaming me. It's totally my fault. All right. I forgot to bring in the Notion client. So here I need to say, actually, I forgot to bring in heaps of stuff. Man, this wasn't going to work ever. We need a client from Notion HQ client, but then we're also, for our episode stuff, we are going to need Notion to Markdown from Notion to MD, and we're also going to need Marked from Marked. So we have these libraries installed from previous streams. We did this in the first episode, but I didn't import them at the top here. So everything was not working. I'm surprised I didn't get an error message that nothing was actually defined, but that's fine. It's my fault. But now we can go and get our list of episodes. And so here we get back an array of episodes. We have an ID and a title for each episode. And we can also grab anything else. So we could grab, slug, and we could grab our release date, and we could grab our audio URL, and we could grab our HTML. Does all of this work? It does work. Okay, cool. So we can get back all of those fields. So this is what I was saying before is that like this is emulating what our client is going to select from this from our Cloudflare worker. And so if we only care about ID or title, we don't need to send back slug or release date or audio URL or HTML. We can just get rid of those from our query, and GraphQL gives us the ability to just kind of like filter down the response object into what we actually need, what we're going to use in our component that's making this request. So if we only care about ID and title, we only get back ID and title, which is very cool. So now, if we wanted to select a particular episode, we need to give it a slug. So I'm going to go control space, and it's going to give me that slug. And again, I think it was John's origin story is probably the shortest slug title. So I'm going to get ID and title and maybe audio URL for these or for this one episode. Awesome. And I get that back, and that's all correct. So then if I also want HTML, which is all that extra work that needs to happen, you'll see that that's actually really, really snappy because it's already cached it. Even though I only asked for ID and title on that first request, if we have a look at the resolver goes and does, whoops, if I have a look at the resolver for an episode, um, if it doesn't have a cached episode, it goes and gets it from Notion, and it puts together this whole big episode which contains all of the data um, in the cache. So if someone only requests ID and title, it's not that ID and title are the only things that get written to the cache. That whole object gets written to the cache, which means the next person who's only looking for HTML, for example, they can still use that same cached value, which is super, super fast to fetch from the KV store. And then because we're using GraphQL, they can then filter that down to just say, well, I just care about the HTML part of that. And so this is why this is such a super powerful combination. You get that that huge performance benefit from having a KV store caching all of that response data from Notion. But then we also get an additional performance benefit that we are only sending the absolute smallest amount of data that we need to back from our KV store, from our Cloudflare worker to our Remix application. So let's see how quickly we can implement, because we have 3 minutes. We're not going to get it done in 3 minutes, but I do have some copy and pastable snippets, so this should be fine. So I'm going to quit this. I'm going to say, you know what, actually, first I'm going to remove any of our silly console logs. And these ones. Any others? No? Excellent. So I'm going to say Wrangler publish, I think it is. Easy. Awesome. And so we've now published this Cloudflare worker, and it's now replaced the Cloudflare worker that we published yesterday. So now if we go to cache.johnmyers.workers.dev, we will, if we have all the secrets up there, which I'm pretty sure, yeah, we do, then we get our GraphQL server again, but this is running live in production. So you could also go to cache.johnmyers.workers.dev, and you can load up this this GraphQL playground where we can send a query to get all of the episodes, and we want the ID and we want the title, slug and title. And when we send that request, it's going and doing all of that work because it's not in the KV store currently. But then if we send it again and send it again, it's like almost instantaneous. It's so fast. And the same thing for if we're looking for a particular episode. If we pass a slug for again John's origin story, and we send that, it's going to take a long time because we're going and generating all that HTML and doing all of that work. But again, if we send it, it's super, super snappy every other time, which is so, so cool. I've blown myself away, and it wasn't even a big surprise for me that this was going to work like this. I guess I'm just excited that it actually, worked almost within the amount of time that we have. So the last thing we're going to do is I am going to quickly wire this up to the app. So we now have this URL, this cache.johnmyers.workers.dev. This is our GraphQL server. And so we can basically just, oh, what is our unsaved value there? Uh-oh. Might just quickly publish this again. Always remember to save. And then if we send this again, are we all good? We're all good. All right. So we now have this published URL. So let's go to our Remix application and wire it up to pull data from there. So if we go app, routes, and then episodes.jsx. So in here, this is where we were fetching, previously, we were fetching all of the values from our KV store. But this will now fail. If I run npm run dev, and this is going to be running on 8787. So now if I come across to here and go localhost 8787, we get welcome to the navbar. And if I go to /episodes, this will spectacularly fail. And that is because this is no longer returning the shape of the data that we're expecting. Sorry, not this one. This one. Just going to move this over this side. This is now not returning the shape of the data that we're expecting. So then we're sending back basically null from this loader. And then because we have just been building this quickly, we haven't been handling any of our errors. And so we're immediately trying to map over something that is not an array, which is the error that we're getting. Now, you can use a fancy library like Apollo client or Urkel or something like that. But one of the big things that they give you is some client-side magic around like caching and remembering some of these values so it doesn't need to fetch them again. But since we're handling that with Cloudflare in the middle layer, and we're basically just sending this sending this request from the server side, we don't actually get the benefits of using any of those libraries. And so something that like people always tend to reach for a library to do this, but it's actually just a post request that we're sending. You remember at the top, I said that if you send a GET request, you will get that GraphQL playground, which is what the browser sends by default. But if you send a post request, then it will process that query. So we can send a post request like this using fetch. So here we're saying fetch, we're sending it to that URL, so cache.johnmyers.workers.dev. We're telling it that the method is post. The headers for this are content type application JSON, so we're just telling it that this is a JSON object that we're sending across. We then stringify the body to say that we have a query object, and then we're setting it to the string of our actual query. And so this is like the query that we could build up in that GraphQL playground. And then when it's actually getting the data that we want, we can copy and paste that into here. And I don't like how it's indented, but we don't have time to worry about indentation. Cool. So we have that query. It's going getting at our episodes. But if we have a look down here, what are we actually using? We're iterating over our episode, but we're only using the ID, the slug, and the title. So again, why are we selecting any of this other stuff? Let's just get ID, title, and slug. And don't worry about the audio URL. Don't worry about the release date. We don't need them. Cool. So now this should work perfectly if we refresh. Boom. We're getting those, and we're getting them so fast. If we refresh, it's just like, it's almost instantaneous. It's amazing. Now, when we click one of these, it's going to use the old way of going and fetching that HTML. So again, if we click this, we're waiting. Oh, we're going to be waiting a long time. I don't know if we can wait this long when we're on such a tight deadline. Boom. There we go. So that's how long it takes. Let's see how long it takes if we refactor this as our GraphQL query. So over here in episodes and then slug, we can get rid of all of this stuff here and instead replace it with this stuff here. Actually, we still need to get the slug out of the params, don't we? This will be params.slug. And again, I just have to fix up the indentation. I don't know why Prettier can't work it out. Help me out, Prettier. But again, we are just using fetch. We're just going to the same URL, so we don't need any other workers. This one URL can serve all of our queries. We're sending a post request with content type set to application JSON. We're stringifying this query. And so this one, because we need to pass it a variable for that for that slug, we need to make this a named query. So that's where instead of here, we're just saying our query is for episodes and blah, 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 blah. We haven't made this a named query by giving it like a unique ID. Here, we're making it a named query because we are saying that this takes in a slug, which is of type string. And the exclamation mark means that it must be there. And then in our episode query, we're swapping out slug for whatever we pass as a variable here. So yeah, a little bit more confusing as to how we do it. But we pass this query, which is our string. And because that's a string, we just basically leave these placeholders for the variables that we want to swap out. And then that name, slug, or $slug, if you drop the $, that needs to match one of our variables that we're passing through. So this slug is set to our params slug, which is what we're getting from here. This will be params.slug, will give us our unique string that we're looking for. And then we're just pulling that out and sending it back. So now this should magically work. But do we need all this stuff? ID, title, slug, release date, audio URL. If we have a look, all we're using is audio URL and HTML. Because remember, we've still got that panel on the side showing the rest of the list, and that has all of the titles, and clicking those is a link to go to this. But we don't need to display the title again or anything else. We're just displaying the audio URL and the HTML. So again, why are we selecting all this other stuff? Let's get rid of release date, slug, title, ID, and all we're actually fetching is audio URL and HTML. So we're still running our server. So now I might just refresh. Well, I might do the whole reveal here. I'll go back to episodes. And now the first time that I am requesting something, like if I click how to record a good video, it's still going to take time because we haven't populated our cache with this value yet. So the first time we go and get it, we have to wait and we have to wait and we have to wait and we have to wait. And eventually it will swap out the content, maybe. All right, there it is. But if we now go to Simon's origin story, that was much faster. I don't actually know why that was much faster. Maybe it was already in the cache. But if we go back to how to record a good video, it's like almost instantaneous. It's just there. Like, again, we're refreshing and refreshing. And this is how fast we can get that from the KV store. And again, if we click one that we haven't been to before, so what gear do you need to create content? It's going to take its time to go and populate that cache. But then once the cache is populated sometime soon, maybe, boom. Once the cache is populated, we can then go back to how to record a good video, and it's just instantaneous. So that is how cool it is pairing Cloudflare Workers, KV storage, and GraphQL and Remix to make a not very nice looking site, but a very nicely functional site. Now, we obviously wouldn't want our users to have to click one of these and then wait for that first one to resolve to be able to populate the cache. We'd want to like automatically populate the cache so that no one needs to wait for that first response. And so that's what we will do in a future stream where we're going to look at using scheduled tasks in Cloudflare. So we can create like basically a cron job, and we're going to set up a mutation that can handle refreshing the cache. And then we will call that on a schedule of maybe like every day. We'll blow out the cache and fill it with fresh values. And then, yeah, and that should be awesome. And then if we, then because we have that mutation, we now have like a mutation that we can call anytime we want to flush out that cache. It means that if we were to publish something new and we want to manually update the cache, then we can do that really easily. But if we forget to do that, or if we just change like one word in one of our documents, it doesn't actually matter. That's just going to automatically be updated once per day when we do that scheduled task. So I'm not sure when I'm actually going to do that. Maybe Tuesday next week. We'll see. But if you want to know when I actually am going to do that, the best thing to do would be head over to youtube.com/c/John Myers and make sure you subscribe. Click that subscribe button, click that notification bell, and then you will be notified when I'm going live with things like this. Also, if you're not going to be able to be there, at the time anyway, because it's some kind of ridiculous time for you, somewhere in the world where it's the middle of the night, then I recommend you go and check out this playlist, which I will put in the description for this video, which I will be updating with videos as I go. I also recommend that you head on over to twitter.com/johnmyers_io and give me a follow so that you can also hear about the other cool stuff that I'm doing. If you have not yet subscribed, head on over to either anchor.fm/NavBar, or you can go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, whatever your podcast platform is. Go and subscribe to the NavBar to hear myself and Simon Vrashliotis catch up every week and talk about something to do with web development or content creation. If this whole process has intrigued you, and you want to learn even more about caching and Cloudflare Workers and KV storage and all of those things, it's just coming up to the weekend, so it would be the perfect time to go and take my entirely free Egghead course, which has just dropped. It's only 28 minutes or 14 minutes at 2 times speed, and you can learn how to cache Supabase data at the edge with Cloudflare Workers and KV storage. And that exact problem that I was just talking about, where we need to manually update the values in the cache, that isn't a problem if we use something like Supabase, because we can subscribe to webhooks. We can basically subscribe to changes in the database, and anytime any of the data changes, Supabase can automatically tell our KV stores what that new value is. So yes, a super awesome thing to pair with Cloudflare Workers and KV storage. Thank you so much for joining me again. It's been awesome. I hope you all have a lovely weekend, and I will probably see you again next week, because we are not finished, but we're getting there. We're getting close. Thanks for watching. Have a good weekend. My name's John, and this is Simon. We've worked as content creators for some time and wanted to share delicious knowledge from the cookie jar. So if you got some time, you're welcome to the NavBar.